And it's so funny because I'm going to be really annoying right now. Uh,
Okay.
that feeling of effort itself is a large part of the self illusion,
God, you're right.
right? That
You're
is
right.
then where to turn to look.
That that's the thing that kills me is you see this stuff, and if I didn't have you, I would overlook this stuff, and it's maddening.
This is why it helps to talk to somebody too in our practice.
Sure.
But this is the thing is that, and I'm also going to be, all right. So blanket statement to anybody watching. Obviously, having really good clarity like of what you described is super helpful. It is really useful, especially when we're starting with all of this stuff, to have a good sense of sensory clarity, what is happening in each of the sense fields, what's happening in the mind, what's happening out there, what am I feeling in the body. All of that is super important.
Right.
It sounds to me, though, like your quest for clarity is itself reinforcing the self illusion. You're at the point because you keep having that feeling that I must be missing something else. There must be something else. There's this idea that there is like some level of clarity where you are going to see something which has never been seen before, which has been the culprit to the illusion. But the fact is, the illusion is made of so many different parts. And I suspect, because, it's where neuroscience is at the moment anyway, a large part of it is coming from the prefrontal cortex and, default mode in general. But the actual functional creation of the sense of self is happening in the brain and is not something that you will ever have direct access to. You can't.
Repeat that sentence, please.
Yeah, the creation of the sense of self is happening by certain regions in the brain, and it is not something that you will ever have direct access to knowing. You
Okay.
can't directly experience your, medial prefrontal cortex turning on and giving a signal to you just can't have that level of discernment, right? It's beyond human capability to know. The only reason we know that we even have a brain is because people have either cut open the skull or done, imaging that can show, oh, well, when you're doing this activity, there's more blood flow or electricity here and blah, blah, blah. So for those of us who don't have, multi-million dollar scanning equipment in our bedroom, we have to deal with what we actually have in our direct experience. And so for that, the sort of best approximation that we can get is to notice the parts of our experience which you just, laid out really well, that you have certain sensations in the body, certain mental images, other different types of thoughts that all collaborate together. And the whole point is those things exist, but they do not actually create the self. They create the illusion of there being some other higher order thing which comes about because of their existence. What I hear is that you're still looking for something which is effectively the self. Like, there's not a self, but you're looking for that one more thing which is going to be the actual self.
Well, let me qualify and clarify that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not looking for the self, but it's looking for that part of your experience that is the sort of the cornerstone to the illusion of self.
Yeah. But the illusion of self doesn't have a single cornerstone. It has
Uh,
multiple ever-changing patterns of thought and sensation.
God, you're right.
And the whole point is to recognize that there is no stable cornerstone of the self there to be found. Everywhere you look for the self, it is always a changing panorama of sensations and thoughts, and there is no stable center to any of it.
I'm so glad I asked you about this because
I
I,
am
I
too.
really was I really was um, I really was wrapping myself up in what were those things? Straitjacket.
Yeah,
I really was just putting myself in a straitjacket.
yeah. And that is the same sense of self that you're looking at that creates that feeling of, oh, I need to do this more. I need to effort in this direction. I'm not succeeding. I'm not fulfilling the task. And that is just another line of thought. And why I say then turn toward that is because you can recognize there is something that feels selfy in that. So then notice it's not to find the cornerstone in that, but it's to find the selfing that's happening in that action.
Okay, hang on a minute. Did you say find the selfing that's happening in that action?
Yeah, there's like a feeling of personal identification, a feeling of meanness, which is involved in that idea that I need to just find that one last little part of the self to,
Okay.
right? That
Now,
itself is part of it.
which part of it?
That itself is part of the illusion. It's not there all the time, right? Because you can feel like a self even when you're not efforting.
Right.
But when you're efforting, you almost always feel like a self. So you know that um there is something about that feeling which has a selfie kind of nature to it. But it's odd because it's it's not completely dependent upon the feeling of efforting to have that sense of self. So that's coming about with other things too. And again, from the neuroscience perspective, I mean, it's quite simply that there are regions of the brain which attribute a sense of personal meaning to things. It takes, a dog barking out there and it says, well, how does that reflect on me? How does that dog barking relate to me? And all of a sudden it feels personal. So the interesting thing is to start to question what it actually means for something to feel personal, because that's not like an inherent part of the experience. And it's one of those things, just like anxiety or fear or happiness, that we take. If I say like it feels personal, you just assume you know what I mean by it feels personal. It's one of those things that is like the something that we just don't realize we should be curious about and investigating, because it's not as simple as just being a foundational part of experience.